Thanks everybody for having me. These things are hard because they typically tend to focus on founders only or CEOs only. So you'll focus on marketing or finance or fundraising. And I try to think of something that would affect a whole bunch of different people, so employees, investors, and founders. And so I decided to go super philosophical because I'm a loser. So the theme is, why does your company exist? Quickly get this out of the way. We are a company called Sokanu. We're in Vancouver. You probably haven't heard of us because we're awful at PR. And what we do is we basically help people find their perfect career. Collected 200 million data points. We're the largest labor database in the world. And yeah, we'll get into that later. So there used to be this concept in ancient Greece. I'm Greek, by the way. When you were 12 or 13, you would basically adopt a life philosophy. And we have kind of done away with that. We now adopt philosophies based on our parents and our friends. But there's a similar gestation period when you start a company that basically you go through as a founder or as an employee when you choose to join something, where you basically try and align yourself with the philosophy of the business. And so there's this huge problem, is that people don't actually think through what the philosophy of their business is. And I'll explain what this means in a minute. But part of the issue is, when you talk about tech startups, you need to attract two different groups of individuals, employees and investors, and they need to be attracted to something that you do. What tends to happen overall is that the CEO actually doesn't communicate why they're doing what they're doing, and that causes like this viral loop of confusion. And so there's really, in my opinion, 5 reasons why people start companies. Reason number 1 is to make as much money as possible. One of the things that's, I think, important is that you watch Silicon Valley, the show, and everybody's trying to change the world. So they have like some Hadoop optimizer that's trying to change the world. It's not, none of these are better than anything else, but they're discrete and they're unique. And so you need to understand very clearly what you fit in. If that was 5 minutes, I give up. So number 1, I think, is to make as much money as possible. When you talk about banks, you talked about RBC and TD. Let's not BS. Their only principle and their only guiding philosophy is to make as much money as possible. And that's okay. That's actually fine. Berkshire Hathaway is one of the greatest companies in the world, and that's their philosophy. Number 2 is to solve a personal problem. So Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, did not start Spanx because she didn't start some guy's underwear product. She solved a problem that she had. Number 3 is to fill a market need. This tends to be most companies you talk about. Number 4 is to solve a social issue. So Tesla's stated purpose is to get the world off oil. Khan Academy is a nonprofit that solves education. And lastly, and this is probably the most complicated, so we'll get into in a minute, is to utilize personal abilities. So if I had to guess what the order is of current companies in the world, it would look something like this. And so most people here, I think most people aren't tech founders here. They're either employees or looking to become employees. You need to understand very clearly which one of these things you most align with. You have this very dangerous cycle, for example, where number 1 is mostly focused on getting as much venture capital funding as possible. So if you're Zenefits, for example, great example to use since they're getting destroyed right now. Their entire stated purpose was basically to disrupt the benefits industry. You join that company to make money. You join that company for options, and you join that company to go on the rocket ship. Once that starts to go away and you don't actually solve a market need, people will bail. And so you have risk and reward for each one of these scenarios. When you're trying to make as much money as possible and you don't make money, guess what happens? People leave. When you solve a personal problem, people that also have that problem are drawn to you. Women are drawn to Spanx for a reason. Number 4 is fascinating. So there are companies that exist that literally only exist to utilize personal abilities. And I'll explain that a little bit more. Some of you may have read Pixar's book by Ed Catmull. And basically, you look at Pixar as a company, they get the most creative people on the planet Earth in a room and literally create happiness for people. They don't have a stated business model. If things work out creatively, obviously they're going to distribute film and do very well. But they literally attract people who are the best at what they do and say, be creative. So John Lasseter will go and be creative. Same thing with Oculus. There's a couple other different companies too. And lastly, and this tends to get the most attention, is people that want to solve a social mission. Mission-driven companies get more attention than others about being better than everybody else. But they're all extremely unique. So if you're a founder, if you're an employee, or if you're an investor, you really need to think about why you want to be involved with something. You should only work with people who understand and share your philosophy. Let's imagine a board of directors for a minute, a 5-person board of directors with a company. if your stated goal in your head, your philosophy as a board is to make as much money as possible, and that company's stated mission is to solve a social problem, you're going to have a deep, deep problem because you're actually solving different things. So the best companies actually know what they are not. Many companies, and I've made this mistake, try to disguise themselves as something else. So they'll try and solve an issue, but pretend like their only purpose is to make money or vice versa. And the reason why it's so important is two reasons, actually. Number one is it leads to different capital allocation. So the way that you make decisions about your company is different depending on your philosophy. But number two is you as the founder and CEO or you as the employee are unique. And so we get trapped into these kind of modes of doing things because other people tell us to. But you want to build the best company or the best career for yourself. And that needs to be optimized based on one of these 5 things. So that's it. And any questions? Sure. It's actually something that, like, I always think about. So the question was basically, is there philosophical differences between Canadians and Americans in the companies? Well, the answer is yes. I think 100% yes. And the best example is that we live in Vancouver. You can drive 2 hours south and reach Seattle. GDP of Seattle is $230 billion. GDP of Vancouver is $50 billion. Starbucks, Expedia, Microsoft, Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. We have great companies too, but none of them are those. And you have to ask yourself, you have the same climate, the same population, the same everything, what is different? What's different about Seattle than Vancouver? And I think it comes down to a couple things. One is we're not as obsessed with domination. So like the whole to solve a personal problem and the whole to solve a market need, I don't think we're very good at the to solve a market need issue. And number two is I think we just don't have the killer instinct in a lot of different cases. Some people do. But we're not obsessed with being the best in the world. We're obsessed with being the best in Vancouver or the best in Canada. And there's a huge, huge difference between the two. I'm sure there's different philosophical differences too, but we tend to have the same buckets. We just tend to attack them in different ways.
Question back here.
I was going to say, so for your company, so
Yeah.
Can you walk us through that, what company you are, maybe if you thought you were something else and you changed, you said.
Yeah, I mean, so I originally started the business because everybody in my high school was basically they were taking educational courses and picking careers based on their friends and their parents. None of them were choosing careers based on their intrinsics and who they were uniquely. And I wanted to build basically the Pandora or OkCupid for careers. And when we started, we actually had no concept of a business model. We barely still do now. And we were really focused on just solving an issue. And I mean, we've been around for 3 years now, have 10 employees, and the reason why people are still with us today, if I'm being totally honest, is because we solve an issue that actually has meaning to people. And we've made the mistake of trying to transition towards, for example, making as much money as possible. That's left us with basically a year of wasted time because we thought we could be something different that we weren't. Causes rifts with board. I've been through a bunch of this different stuff. So for us, we are trying to solve a social issue, trying to be mission driven, and being true to ourselves has led to better results.
Any other questions here at the back? Yep.
Really like the pitch. It's more like marketing by teaching, where you don't talk about the company at all, but talk more about what it's about. We're actually looking for account executives right now.
Yeah.
People that are looking to be in sales roles because we have more leads that we can follow up with.
Yeah.
As have anybody that is interested in that role. We would love to hear back from you guys.
Well, if you want promotion, you go to employers.sokanu.com and just post a job. We'll send you lots of traffic.
Cool.
But you can also come up to me and can talk about that stuff
Awesome.
too. We have lots of account executives on the site, so.
Great.
Yeah.
Good connection. All right, any other questions? Yep.
Are any of those items mutually exclusive? I understand the exercise of force ranking them.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, I think the best thing to do is to actually force rank them. I mean, you're going to have a blend. Like, imagine you have like 100 jelly beans, right? The idea would be that you allocate jelly beans to each one. It's not that you're binary. You're not going to be like, we only make money and humans are just disgusting creatures, right? It's like you're going to have some blend of jelly beans across them. But what you'll find is if you actually sit down with your company and try and force rank these, A, it's very difficult to do, but B, is that order will probably elicit what your strategy is going to be. At least it's done that for us. So I would say there's an allocation part of that.
All right. Any other? Oh, one more.
Yeah, that's fine.
Would you say that in a sense, the company that you founded kind of already is geared towards one of these? Because I mean, if you're starting a venture capitalist firm and you're telling me that you're not trying to make as much money as possible,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? And you're trying to, you know, make things better for,
Yeah.
you know, funding and stuff like that. Yes, I can see how that's possible. I feel like certain companies are already geared towards one of these.
Yeah, and they should be. Like I said, if you start at Berkshire Hathaway today, you should be geared towards making as much money as possible. It's not a bad thing, right? We've been geared towards, I think, the social issue without really knowing it since day one. And so we've kind of had to slot into that, which means things like it takes longer to achieve success, you raise less money, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, there's, like I said, none of those are better than anything else. I think they're just very different philosophies.